So I'm here with Stacey Gregg, the writer and director of the film Here Before, which is premiering at South by Southwest this week. Stacey, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today.
My pleasure. Very nice to meet you.
So I gather this is your first feature film, and I'd love to hear about the process of how the movie came together for you.
Yeah, you're right. So the idea for the movie had probably been with me for a long time, and my background is in theatre making and screenwriting. So I guess for a while I'd been thinking about you moving into directing for screen, and I'd made a short film and really enjoyed the experience and felt very empowered by it. and I just sort of I took that leap, I guess, and we were on a scheme called iFeatures, which is about developing and upskilling first time directors and writers. And then off the back of that, we got fully financed within, I think, a relatively quick time. Uh, and then we shot 4 weeks on location in Belfast, just outside Belfast. Um, and we got Andrea on board. Collaboration with all these incredible HODs that came on board. And then we shot the film, and then the pandemic happened, lockdown happened, and I had to sort of work out how to finish the film remotely on my own from my bedroom. So I think it's probably, in many ways, like the rest of my career, like not the most straightforward process, but an incredible one and a humbling one. And I'm very proud of the final film.
I think the film was excellent. Actually, I'm very curious to hear what the process was like to bring it all together in COVID. I gather you finished filming a little bit before the
Mhm.
pandemic struck, but what was that process like for you?
It was daunting, and the main challenge was that I'm a very collaborative person. I like to chat. Creativity comes from stimulation, and suddenly we none of us were seeing each other. And I just moved, so I was in this room that was like undecorated and really sad. And you're to be creatively inspired, and that was tough. But I felt very supported by my producers, my editor, and all the guys at the Post House Yellow Moon. And I just when I was feeling that, I was able to express it. And we had such a good shoot and such good material. Very luckily it just it came together the way we envisaged. It just took a little bit of thinking outside the box, I suppose, to get through post. But I feel like I got through that on my first feature. I can kind of take on anything.
It'll be
So,
easier in the normal times.
yeah, I'm like, that's going to be a cakewalk. And I like my learning curve steep, so it certainly was that.
One of the things I found interesting about the film, it's very meditative and specific in the way that it deals with grief, the grief of a mother. And I was curious how you and Andrea sort of came up with this portrait. How much of it came from the writing, the collaboration. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think that a lot of it initially was on the page. So again, my background, I think, being theatre, the sort of psychological complexity of that and the nuance of that all felt really crucial to me. And the idea that that Laura is a woman who is surviving and who is being strong, really, because she has a family, she has a son, and I grew up, I feel, surrounded by people who were doing just that. So this sense of a representation of how people continue to live and navigate with grief, and it being a layered thing, was always really fundamental to this piece and to this character. And when I met Andrea, I just felt like that was something she really connected to immediately, and we talked quite a bit about that. And she's such an emotionally intelligent person anyway, that it seemed very instinctive, I think, for her to step into that role and to bring that combination of fragility and strength. And there are a number of contradictions in that process and in that character. And we early on we talked about this really beautiful uh, post that Nick Cave had written in response to a question about the loss of his son, and it hit so articulately on some of the things we felt the story was exploring. And it's all sorts of things about how we will our spirits and how they can lead us out of the darkness, and what that might mean. And I think again, we all really connected on that level. So I would say it was there from the start, but a performer like Andrea really brings the goods and the emotional intelligence to deliver those things.
Yeah, I mean, I love Andrea both in the film and really in everything. She's a
Yeah.
fantastic actress. What was the process like bringing her on board?
Well, I mean, I basically wrote her a fan letter and sort of chanced my arm, or like, I was like, "Hey, I think you're amazing. I've got this script," and of course, I didn't, I really didn't think that it would go the mile, but stranger things have happened, and she was, I think she was on a shoot at the time, and she said, "Well, look, I'll read it," and then she got back so quickly, and so I went and met her in Soho. We hit it off, and it's just an incredible validation for someone her to come on board and feel invested enough in the project. So and I think there's, like I say, there was a sort of a kind of incredible ease and shorthand, I think, in terms of how she works and what she needs and the way that I work. And maybe she could sort of sense that, from when we met. But I certainly knew that I was going to be quizzing with Andrea Riseborough because she's amazing. So it was a total treat. But I do think there's a sort of reciprocity in process that you need to sort of click, to be able to uh, sort of strike out on something like this together. And yeah, I just feel really grateful for that.
It makes it That's a wonderful connection. One of the things that I really appreciated were the sort of details of the suburban life. It feels so very specific. I think of the one scene of the Laura's husband leaving for the day while the neighbor is outside smoking a cigarette, or the other scene where he's coming back and the boys outside playing basketball. There are all these sort of suburban details at play. I was curious how much of that was intentional, how much of that came together in the edit, how much was things you came up with on the day of shooting.
I mean, I would say very intentional. Again, I'm quite obsessed about. There's something I wanted to push together, to defamiliarize what felt familiar. So again, this is suburbia, and the rhythms of suburbia is the landscape of my youth, and yet it's so strange, and there's so much sort of psychic energy flying around, and I wanted to sort of invent, like, even when you see the wheelie bin being put out for the bin men, I wanted to feel something, so that sort of sense of the uncanny, and the sort of the subversion of the rhythms that we become so conditioned to take for granted or to feel used to. I just wanted to sort of make it feel a little bit sideways. And again, those sort of micropolitics between neighbours, like there's a very slight socioeconomic difference, a class difference between the two households. Stuff like that, again, was all very intentional and quietly layered in, so that the performances could just happen and we could stand back and just let it play out, with the intention, I guess, that an audience could just enjoy that without being told it or fed it too much. That's my taste, probably, as a filmmaker and a film lover. So I would say a lot of that stuff was designed and was intentional, but obviously we encountered some lovely serendipitous surprises along the way, and it was great to feel like we could scoop those up. And there was like quite a bag of tricks by the time we got to the edit. Lovely imagery that we might have come across, or little offcuts, when the camera was still turning over, stuff like that I think just helped with that texture.
One of the other things I appreciate, the two child actors are both really wonderful here. And I was curious, how did the casting process work? How did you find, especially these are not, simple roles that they're playing. And I thought they both just incredibly believable sort of performances. And I'd love to hear the process of finding them, getting, integrating them into the process, everything like that.
It makes me so happy to hear you say that. I'm so proud of them. I'm proud of those performances. I love actors, and I get a real thrill when I see a sense of liveness. And it's not every actor will give you that. So when we started looking, meeting kids, I was looking for a certain thing. I wasn't sure what it was, but Lewis and Neve, gave us that in abundance. Lewis has something very unassuming about him, and really boysy, and sort of, there's loads of attitude, but he's also got that vulnerability, and it's perfect, for that age between a boy and a man who's protective of his mother. Um, Again, very intelligent. Neve is like an old soul and hilarious and really sort of, streetwise, but also, just such a sweet kid. And she was, again, very untrained. So, she wouldn't learn lines, for example. We would just like run beats and some dialogue before we shot. So it always felt very fresh. And there was always that potential for, improvisation. And, both the kids, we also just made sure they had a really good time. It sounds really obvious, but like, a happy cast and a happy crew gives you the best thing that you can work with. And, I think we had a really fun time. The main thing was keeping the kids warm because it was so cold. They were both really, they were troopers. But yeah, I think it was such a thrill when I did find, when I did end up in the edits to have those performances to work with. And yeah, they're both legends.